Welcome, everybody. This is David Henzel, your host. Welcome to the Managing Happiness Show, where we interview successful entrepreneurs on how they manage to have a happy family life while dealing with the madness of entrepreneurship. Today's guest is Mark Daoust, the founder of Quiet Light Brokerage, a web business brokerage firm. And Mark specializes in exit planning and the sales of internet businesses. And Mark also recently acquired CatholicSingles.com, a 20-year-old dating service. And we'll talk about this a little bit. And in terms of family, Mark is a very brave man. Mark has 6 children. I repeat, 6 children. I have 1, and I'm sometimes slightly overwhelmed with this. So hats off to you. His oldest is 11 years old, and the youngest was just born. And in his own words, his life goal is to never have to mow a lawn again. And I'm pretty sure you will accomplish this, Mark. Happy to have you on the show.
Thanks so much for having me.
I'm curious to hear why you bought CatholicSingles.com, since you already have, Quiet Light Brokerage, which is, up and running, going pretty well.
Sure.
What made you do that?
It checked a lot of boxes for me professionally. There's a financial portion. Quiet Light Brokerage is doing well; it's established, but the revenues for Quiet Light Brokerage is very. It's a roller coaster. Mm-hmm. You get good paydays, and then you can go a while without a good payday for a while. That was one reason, but that's probably the least reason. The smallest of the reasons that I bought Catholic Singles. Part of it is just an entrepreneur. I like to do different things, and I've been doing Quiet Light Brokerage for 10 years. So it was a nice diversion, something new, a new challenge that I could really pour myself into professionally, when I can use a lot of those principles in Quiet Light Brokerage. And then also the aspect of helping people out. I'm a faith-based person. I live my life according to my faith, and being able to have a business that is involved with my faith was a big checkbox for me. I love Quiet Light Brokerage. I love working with people. I love helping people. But sometimes, I'll be honest, I feel like I'm just shifting money around from one successful person to another. And not that they don't deserve to have some help and guidance, but it's nice to be able to help people in a different capacity. And so Catholic Singles really checked a lot of those boxes for me. I'm super excited about it. It's been a ton of fun so far, a lot of work, but a lot of fun, and I'm learning the challenges of having 2 businesses, which is a challenge in itself.
Yeah, but it very much is. So we at MaxDN, we had multiple brands, which, it's not really multiple businesses, but multiple brands was also a ton of work. And I can only imagine running 2 businesses at the same time. I guess thinking about purpose or impact, with Quiet Light Brokerage, you have impact on the person selling the business and the person buying the business. But with Catholic Singles, I guess it's more a mass scale game, right?
Well,
having impact in people's lives.
Yeah, I think professionally with Quiet Light Brokerage, we're able to bring a certain, I don't know the word for it, but a certain attitude towards the entire process of buying and selling a valuable asset. I think a lot of people, when they think about acquisitions, they go back to the movie Wall Street, if you've ever seen that. But it's this kind of hardball negotiation tactic. We're going to get that person to overpay for my business, and we're gonna negotiate everything down. And we're able to bring to those transactions a much different attitude, a much more, in my opinion, much more productive for everybody attitude towards those transactions, and that's great. I love doing that. But the impact of that sort of event in someone's life, as great as it is, in my opinion, kind of pales in comparison when you think about helping people find their life mate, right? That's a completely different thing. And so there's a certain edification in knowing that we can create an environment to help people meet each other and have a purpose to their life outside of business. So both businesses in a way are matchmaking, but very, very different with very different applications and very different price points. So I guess matchmaking is the thing that does unite those 2 businesses together.
Did you how did you find Quiet Light Brokerage? Did you how did you find Catholic Singles? Did you reach out, or did you did they approach you and you thought like, hey, this is kind of made for me. I want to buy this myself? Just curious.
Yeah, it was the latter. So I have not done a lot of client work with Quiet Light Brokerage in the past few years. But it was about 3 years ago. It was the week after Christmas. And the way that we work is we usually have one of our advisors handle all incoming inquiries. People that want to know how much their business is worth, they can get a free consultation. So usually one of my advisors works on that every week, just takes all those inquiries and they talk to the person. And nobody wanted to do it the week after Christmas because they were all busy with their families. And so, as the business owner, what do? You fill in. And so I filled in, and I got this inquiry from Catholic Singles, and I thought, well, this is kind of up my alley. And I worked with him for
kind of a late Christmas present for you.
Right. I'm like, wow, this is pretty cool. But he wasn't ready to sell. His valuation didn't come in where it made sense for him to sell. So I worked with him for a couple of years to get that valuation up to where he wanted. And then last summer, I approached him finally and said, you know what? I think it's time. This looks like something I'd be really interested in. Would you be interested in selling to me? Which is always, you get worried about people thinking there's a conflict of interest. So I just told him, there's no obligation through Quiet Light Brokerage or anything of that matter. But it worked out, and we closed this past April on the business. So it's been a 3 year plus journey.
How involved are you with them? Do you do business consulting, or do you just you're a sounding board, or how
during
involved
that
are you?
For that exit planning process?
No, not for the exit plan. With exit planning, I can imagine that it's quite involved, but throughout the the 3 years that you were in contact with them. Or is this the norm with just curious how your business model works, or how much support you give businesses that get a quote and are not ready yet, and how much do you
as much as they want, really, and it's up to them how much they want us to help. Typically the way it works is if we do a valuation for somebody, and a lot of people come to us to have a valuation because they're thinking of selling 1 to 2 years down the road, which is great. It's what you should do, really. But oftentimes somebody will come to us with wanting to know if it's the right time to sell. So we do a valuation, and it comes in less than what they want. And so we'll often give them a list of items to work on. Usually working on the transferability of your business, or here's an area that buyers are going to really have a problem with, or maybe your financial books are a mess. And we'll give them some advice as to what they should do and some specific items that they should work on. And oftentimes, and with Catholic Singles, he came to me every few months, maybe 3 to 6 months. And I took a look at his books again. We did another fresh valuation, got updates on things, and had a good sense for the direction he was heading. For him, a lot of it was he needed to grow the business a bit bigger to get to where he wanted to be. So he was checking in to see, am I there yet? Am I there yet? And I was giving him checkpoints. Here's what the value will be worth now. Here's what the market is doing right now. So really, it depends on how much somebody wants to utilize us. So we're kind of a sounding board, but if somebody wants that more detailed action item list, we can certainly do that as well.
Sounds like the perfect content marketing opportunity, because I went through the process of selling MaxCDN a little over a year ago, and it was quite interesting to realize all the things that you should put in order, like having clean books, having we're a million and one things. Thank God my business partner, Chris, already went through a bigger exit before, so we kind of knew what was expected from, what bigger buyers expect from you. But, when you start out and you grow your first business, it's very valuable information that you can share with people, that, it's easy to do this along the way versus towards the end when, you're busy with the selling process anyway, which can take up a lot of your time. And if you have these things, your ducks in a row beforehand, it makes it way easier.
It does. And so that's a lot of what we preach. We do a lot of content, as you said, on our site. When I give presentations at conferences, I talk about that. Sometimes I worry that people are going to look and say, boy, what an accounting geek. All he talks about is getting his books in order. But when you go through the process once, you learn the next time. Yeah, it really makes a big difference. One of my top advisors and business partners, Joe Valley, sold his business through us. And he often comments that he worked harder selling his business than he ever did working on the business.
Really?
Just because it does take a lot of work to get all the documents in order. So that's a lot of what we do. We help people know what they have to get in order. And usually, to be honest, it does fall right on those financial documents where we just tell them that this needs to be cleaned up before you can even think about selling.
I'm very big on mission statements and vision statements because it had just a giant impact in Max City and in my last business. First, we didn't have one, and then once we created one, it really took off. And then, unfortunately, we lost it. We never wrote it down. It was just in the founding team's heads, and then we hired more and more strong people in key positions like new head of sales, new head of engineering, and then we started to run into 10 different directions because we're not communicating this. So I'm curious to see if you have a vision statement and a mission statement or core values spelled out for your businesses.
It's a great question. And it's something that would probably be good for us to put in place as we are growing. I've always kept a fairly small team and run a fairly light operation. Part of that goes in line with my overall life goals and strategy. Right? I don't want to have a large corporation with lots of people. It doesn't fit in with my life.
You already have a large family, right? So you don't have...
I have a large corporation. That's right, and the employees are absolutely nightmare. No, they're great. As Quietly Brokerage grows and our team grows, I can feel some of the same things that you were talking about that happened at MaxCD, and that makes complete sense. And I think earlier on, I was able to really put that fingerprint of those core values on our processes and work with people to adopt those same principles. So we do have core principles that we do follow. I think it would probably be very worthwhile for us to write them down and formulate them into something that we can all look to and check ourselves against.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is what these things are for. These are the filters that you have to run your big decisions through.
Right. Yeah.
I heard I did some research about you. I listened to another podcast and you were talking about the way that you sell, which really resonated with me. Like you take more the consultative approach, also like, with how you did this with Catholic singles, that you tell the guy like, hey, you're not ready yet. I don't want to, that doesn't make sense for you to sell yet, versus the used car salesman mentality that is, still unfortunately very popular in a lot of industries or a lot of businesses, that is just about like making a sale, don't care. Really resonated with me.
Yeah. As far as that, I mean, I think there are different sales styles that work, obviously, but different products or different services lend themselves to different approaches. And when it comes to somebody's business, that's such a personal thing. It's such a valuable asset that you've built. And anyone who's an entrepreneur knows, I mean, we know how much work it is to build something and how difficult it is to actually find those formulas that really work. I would never want to have somebody sell their business and then a year later think that was a really, really stupid thing to do. Financially, people are surprised sometimes when I say this because it sounds like I'm trying to make my business fail, but financially it doesn't make sense to sell a business, and it shouldn't be. I tell people sometimes to just think in your head for 2-3 minutes, try and imagine what our economy would look like if it was better to sell a business than it was to own a business. No one would want to buy, right? There would be no sense in buying. So financially, it always makes more sense to hang on to a business. You'll make more money in the long run. So the reason why do people sell? People sell because the landscape of their lives changes. Something else changes in their life. Their goals change, or the opportunity landscape changes, or whatever the case may be. It's not financially driven most of the time. There's financial incentive, of course, and that's a big component. But that's not what drives somebody to say now is the time to sell, for the most part. And it shouldn't be, in my opinion. So that consultative approach, I've just found works better. It also works better with my personality. I enjoy helping people in that way. And hopefully we do add value for people.
Yeah, I'm 100% sure that you'll do, because when you do this for the first time, just the preparation work to make sure you don't get hit with crazy taxes that you didn't expect, or there's like so many minds that you can step in this process. So it's in case when you listen to this and you think about selling your business, make sure you talk to Mark before doing anything.
Or anyone on my team. We'll all give you the same type of advice. Absolutely.
What drives you personally? Kind of with managing happiness, it's all about applying business principles to your family life. So I, have this mission, vision, core values for your business, and I'm a big fan of having this for your personal life as well. So I'm curious what drives you.
Well, I mean,
why do you do what you do?
I don't talk about this a lot because I don't want to come across as preachy by any means. But I am a faith-based person. So my relationship with God is number one in my life by far, and that drives me. And I come from a belief standpoint that God has a calling for all of us and a purpose for all of us in life, and you respond to that call. And in my life, that call has been first and foremost to be a husband, and then a father, and then on top of that to be a responsible professional in the business world. And so that priority and focus, when I keep that focus, and I'm not saying that I do because it's so easy to get that out of whack, but when that focus is right, when my eyes are focused first on my relationship with God, then when I'm being a good husband, it's because it's also being driven with that focus on my faith. And when I'm being a good business owner, it's because the core principles of what I'm going for are all lined up in the right way. So that order of priorities and what is your overall goal in life? Where are you going? What do you want to do with your life? I know you and I talked off this podcast about thinking about that deathbed moment and looking back on your life and thinking, what did I do with my life? And it was now 5 years ago when my father passed away, and I had the incredible opportunity, and I say this is incredible, as awful as it was, but I had the incredible opportunity to sit by his bedside for the last 3 days of his life when he was frankly in a lot of pain. It was not, looking back, it's not enjoyable, but I wouldn't trade those 3 days of my life for anything at all. It's one of those marquee moments. And I remember coming home one night after spending the entire day at his bedside with my brothers and sisters and my mom and friends that were coming in to say goodbye. And I remember sitting down and watching TV with my wife, and I had a friend over as well. And I thought, when I die, I sure hope that I'm not on that deathbed thinking, I watched a lot of great TV. That would be awful, if that's what I ended up with. And so, the deathbed reflection, some people think it's morose or depressing. I think it's motivating. We're going to get there at some point. So take some time to think about it.
100%. Like when we had this earthquake a few days ago here in Bodrum, 6.7, this was like another thing. The next day I was like fired up. I had so much energy because, just like another reminder, hey, time's limited, use it wisely, do stuff that matters. And I was really pumped after this.
Right. Yes, absolutely.
And something you just said with sitting next to your father, the last 3 days while he was around, I can, imagine that this must be very painful, but also very helpful to be with him when in these final hours. And unfortunately, my mother passed away 4 years ago, 3.5 years ago. And I was not able to be with her, which really stung. My wife was pregnant, and we were in America, and my mother was back home in Germany. And we, because my wife was pregnant, I had to promise my mother that I'm not coming over to be with her, that I stay with my wife, which was a very extreme conflict and really sucked. But, it is what it is. Yeah. Acceptance.
Right.
It's the name of the game.
Yeah.
Serenity prayer. Right.
Right. It is difficult, but again, I hate to be focusing so much on death here, but talking about
I think it's totally okay. Death is part of life, and in our society or in the Western society, it's like this big taboo topic, and more people should think about this. I
agree. I remember my mother-in-law passed away a couple of years ago, and it was fairly sudden, and we were at the wake. And one of my wife's cousins was crying, and I sat down next to her and we started talking, and the questions she was asking were big questions and important questions in life, and it made me realize that we don't think about these big questions in life enough. I think, especially in Western society, we are masters at distraction for ourselves. We distract ourselves with what we're doing this weekend. We distract ourselves with everything. Just walk down the streets of New York or any major metropolitan city any day of the week and take a look at how many people have headphones in and are pumping noise into their head. And I'm not saying you need to become a monk or anything, but taking some time to be quiet and to allow the thoughts, the big questions in life to kind of bubble up, and they will bubble up. Is telling. And if anyone is listening to this wants a challenge, I'm going to issue a challenge to you, and that's this: find somewhere. Don't even take a walk or anything. Find a room and shut everything off. No music, no television, no internet. See if you can sit with the thoughts in your own head for 30 or 45 minutes. My guess is you're going to go crazy about 30 to 45 minutes in. It's very, very difficult to do. And it shouldn't be that difficult, but it's difficult because we don't know how to be quiet, and we just distract ourselves with it. If you do sit for 30 to 45 minutes, what happens is things come up, things will pop up and bubble up into your head that you should be dealing with. But now I'm starting to preach. I'm not going to preach.
No, I think that's, and I don't think that's preaching. I think it's absolutely right. I'm a big fan of meditation, and I do this on a daily basis, and it's something that you definitely have to learn to be able to quiet your mind, and it has such a positive impact on or just from my perspective, it had a crazy impact on me in terms of how calm and how relaxed and how centered I became after.
I haven't met anybody who has practiced that who says otherwise. So yeah, I would agree.
A question that I always ask everybody, because I'm a huge book nerd, and I love to hear what other people read, and to get book tips. I also ask this when I'm about to hire somebody to see if they're in a growth mindset, if they continuously read. So I'm curious to hear, what are the 3 books that influenced you the most in your life, and what was the last book that you read?
I'll start with the last book that I read. That's probably the easiest thing to answer, and that's Prince Caspian, part of the Chronicles of Narnia series. And the reason that I read that last is that I read that to all my kids. So I'm now reading that to child 3 and number 4. So it's my 3rd time through this series. I really do enjoy the books. It's brilliantly written, and some just incredible points in there.
It's a recurring theme, actually. The last person I asked this question on the podcast had this similar answer. He just finished a Harry Potter book that he was reading to his kids. So
I read more good books because I read to my kids every night than I have the rest of my life. I read a lot of the classics that I didn't read before. We read King Arthur, the original King Arthur series, and they were fascinating. I never really gave them a chance before, but they were fascinating. Personally, I find the question hard to answer because the best books change a lot on where I am in life. So I'll go with some recent books. Citizen Soldiers was a book about just the ordinary soldiers during World War II, and I'm a big fan of that era. The sense of duty and obligation that everybody during that time faced, I think, is honorable and something that I wish in my life I had more of a sense of. And I would love to emulate that, the sense of duty and obligation and responsibility. And, we've lived in a world that has a lot of conflict, but not on the scale of what we saw during the Great World Wars. And so, we're so many generations separated from that, it's hard for us to understand what that would have been like. And it's pretty amazing to see what the human spirit did during that time frame.
Being from Germany, I have feel a little different.
I'm sure there's actually a book on my list which talks about it from the German perspective. So I'm fascinated in reading that as well. Another book that I read recently that really inspired me was Mother Teresa's diaries, personal diaries, and that I find fascinating. When we think about Mother Teresa, we think, oh yeah, she was a pretty good woman. When you read about, first of all, who she was and the fact that she wasn't particularly talented in any way. She wasn't, I mean, she was obviously talented, but she didn't stand out as this is a person who's going to change the world. And then you see what she did, effectively building up a multinational organization that literally did change the world and rocked politics on both a local and global level. And the way that she went about it was consistently not about her. It's an amazing, amazing story as to how her life just kind of sprung up like this, and just the impact that selflessness, total emptying out and pouring out of yourself, what that can make. My last book was not as exciting. I believe I'm going to get the title wrong. I think it was Time Management Tips of Topic. It was a time management book, and there was just one realization in there that was so obvious, and it's one of those like, well, duh, of course, sort of moments. But it was about time being your most valuable asset, and the point that the author was making was pretty simple, and that's everything else in life, every other asset that you have in life can be replaced to some extent, except for time. It's the one thing that once it's gone, it's gone. And reordering that priority to understand, okay, you know what? Time for business, from a business perspective, it's made me more willing to outsource things and to hire people to do certain tasks, because I never wanted to spend the money before, but now I'm starting to realize, you know what, it might be worthwhile spending the money if I can gain some time back for family or for other projects within my business.
Right, very true. At Max CDN, our vision statement was a world without waiting. Because also the pitch was that we think that time is the most valuable asset there is, and this is why at Maxidin you never have to wait was kind of the pitch.
Right.
So I 100% agree that time is super valuable, and don't watch TV, don't waste it on stupid stuff. It really depends what you want to do with your life. To your point, I don't want to be preachy, but
yeah. The name of the book is 15 Secrets About Time Management. So I don't actually read a lot of business advice books, but that one was well worth it.
I read. Actually, I'm really excited about starting to read to my daughter, because I only read business or personal development, personal growth books. That's all I have read for the last, 20-some years or so. I'm pretty boring. Those books are good, but I think you can learn a lot of personal development from some of the classics out there, which is, from the Chronicles of Narnia. I've picked up lessons from that I've applied to my life, and I've thought about it a lot in my life as well. The Chronicles of Narnia, as I'm reading them, I've been reading them now for 5 years straight. So I think you can definitely pick up some lessons outside of the personal development books. I'll order one and get this started next week.
There we go.
Moving to family, quick overview over your fairly large family and how you manage work-life balance, and if you have any tips, tricks, or hacks.
Hang on.
Well, if somebody knows, you must know.
Well, yeah. I mean, I'm not going to tell you I have it figured out. Life moves on whether or not you've got it figured out or not. I was talking to a friend about this morning, and I told her, I said, have you ever been to Disney World before in Florida?
Yes.
Okay, so
no, in Orange County, but
okay. So there's a ride in Hollywood Studios called the Rock and Roller Coaster, and you start out in darkness, and then you go from 0 to 60 in like 2 seconds, and I just almost a whiplash sort of effect. And I said, that's actually how it kind of feels some of the time. You don't know what's coming, and you're just kind of hanging on. So as far as do I have any practical tips? No, I think that the biggest tip I can give is what we already talked about before, and that is have those priorities. Know what your vision is in life. And that, for me, that's always been what's worked. When I lose that vision, when I lose that order, if I make business the most important thing in my life, everything else starts to fall apart, right? If I do nothing but focus on my kids, everything else will still fall apart. I think there's a lot of value in kids seeing their parents work and seeing them work hard as well. I like the fact that my kids see me leave in the morning and come back at night, and come back. I get to come home for lunch as well. So I because I live fairly close to my office. And so I come home for lunch and I see them, but they see that I leave. They know that I work. They know that I work hard. And then when I come home, they know that I'm there for them. And there's a certain order. And I think, I will find out. I mean, I guess they could grow up and become criminals, but my hope is that I'm able to give them, a certain level of responsibility or something to aim for or model themselves after as they're growing up. So that order, keeping the perspective in life, what's important to you? What's your core value? What are you aiming for? And what do you want on your deathbed to be either looking forward towards or looking back upon is so important to me. And keep that singular focus on that. And then the rest of it really is just hang on, because life doesn't slow down. Even when you're asking and screaming, please stop, it's not going to slow down.
For me, what really helped me was when I realized that I have these different roles in life, that I'm, a father, a husband. I'm not a son I'm not a son anymore because both my parents passed away. But, then have the responsibility for my business. And I used to be a Toastmaster, so I had responsibilities there as well. So, and I wrote all these roles on top of my calendar when I did my weekly planning, and I made sure that I allocated some time to all of these roles, because often I was just fully consumed by business and just gave 100% there and hoped or expected that everything else just kind of magically worked. And yeah, this was like the hack for me that made me keep everything else in mind and organize it properly.
Yeah, I think for myself, I used to have an office in my house, and once we had our daughter, my first child, that it was pretty clear that needed to stop. So getting an office outside the house helped, because it helped me compartmentalize. When I'm at work and I'm working. And so I certainly don't do this very well, but when I go home for dinner, and I get home for dinner every night, when I go home for dinner, that's time for family and to stay focused.
How do you turn off your brain? Like for me, it's always...
I don't.
Like, I mean, not turn off your brain, but turn off your work brain.
I struggle with it. A few things that can help, and that is putting my phone away. That's a big issue, because the phone buzzes whether or not I'm at work or not, and I see it, and I look, and then I'm thinking about it. It's hard to do. Kids, though, I don't know. Having kids does help with that to an extent, because a kid doesn't care about it, and if you allow yourself to just kind of delve into their play world once in a while, it can be nice and a nice escape from the work world. Now with a bunch of sons, I have 5 boys, playing catch with them or wrestling them or something like that. You don't think about business if you're wrestling a kid.
Yeah, it's true. Like when you come home to 6 kids, you probably get just sucked into the family tornado, and the work gets pushed out of your head.
It does. And then, when they start going to bed, then I get back into work mode. So I'll work again in the evening, and then, last thing, probably after around 9:00 at night, my wife and I make sure that we, watch a show together or do something, together, just 45 minutes or an hour, or it's just the two of us. And, our older kids are old enough to stay up a little bit later, and they know that it's our time, so they can be up, but they have to be unseen during that time. Mm-hmm. So yeah.
Yeah, what you said with like going to the office, this is kind of since we moved to Bodrum, I work at home as well, and I really miss this, actually going to the office. It's like like kind of going to the gym. You can do push-ups and stuff at home as well, but going to the gym, then you're just there to do just that, and it is works much better. So I'll probably get an office.
Yep, I would say make the commute at least 10 or 15 minutes, because it gives you enough time to intentionally turn off your brain. If I don't listen to podcasts in the car. I know a lot of people that do. I wouldn't stop thinking about business if I did that. So I'll listen to sports radio, or I'll just turn the radio off completely. Something just to get my mind off of business and try and get myself ready for the family tornado, as you put it.
Talking about tornadoes, what was the toughest thing that you went through as a family?
Recently, again, probably just a few months ago. So we had our 6th baby in February, and this one's been tough because our second youngest is only 1 year old, and I will say that having a toddler and a newborn is tough, really, really tough. But to top it off, so we had our baby in February, and then to top it off in April, my wife actually had a heart attack.
Holy cow.
Yeah, which was, everything stops at that point. Or, as I said earlier, life keeps moving, but you have to stop for a little bit. And so that was definitely a challenge. I had just bought Catholic Singles and acquired Catholic Singles at the beginning of April, and was just really getting into that. And then, with the newborn and a toddler, and then having the heart attack all kind of come on at once, it was overwhelming. But, during that entire process, we had such an incredible network of friends who stepped up and did things that frankly were almost uncomfortable. I had people come over to our house, take all of our laundry, and come back and it was all cleaned.
Wow, that's so awesome.
And then now I've got, friends outside of my work life that come up to me and comment that they had to clean my underwear, which is of course uncomfortable. But
that's really beautiful to get the support. But I can see how this is uncomfortable. In general, I don't have the easiest time asking people for help. So yeah, I can imagine this being very tough. How's your wife doing?
She's doing extremely well. So, very weird sort of thing. It wasn't a normal type of heart attack. It's, so she's actually recovered just fine and her life is normal. She had to have, 5 stents put in. There's always some risk associated with that, but she's not, suffering from low energy or anything else. She's honestly doing as well as any mother of 6 children can possibly do. So tired, but we all are. So
that's awesome. Very happy that this ended.
So
well.
am I.
Wow.
Yeah, so am I.
Wow. Yeah, I told you before, and I mentioned this many times on the podcast. My wife had breast cancer, and she's fine, all is well. But something like breast cancer, I guess, like something you find, then you can prepare mentally for it. But versus heart attacks or something like it's just like so abrupt, and you don't see this coming.
No, and actually I was recording a podcast interview, much like this one, when she called me, and I ignored it because I was in the middle of a recording, and she sent me a message on my computer, and it came up, and it just said, "Hey, I think I need to call an ambulance," and she said, "I'm dizzy and my chest hurts," and all of this. And so I immediately just told the person interviewing me, we were a half hour into the interview. I just said, I got to go. I got to go. And I just ran out and called her and said, call. And, we both thought it was going to be nothing, but turned out, and I mean, the paramedics did as well. They kept telling her why it was nothing to worry about. And then sure enough, she was a few hours away from, the worst case scenario. If she hadn't called. So we're very, very fortunate that things worked out.
A friend of mine from Germany, really amazing person. He was maybe, I guess, 48 or something like this. He walked his dog in the forest and had a heart attack and died, like just 2 weeks ago. So, it's like, it's again, so crazy how fast this all can be over. So,
Sure.
Again, being preach mode on, be conscious about what you're doing. Preach mode off.
Yeah. I think anybody can tell stories of people that they know that have died at young ages. And again, going back to the topic of death, once again, having that in your mind, it's not a bad thing, to have that in your mind and keeping that at the forefront. Know that, look, there's a couple things that are certain in life, and death is one of them. We're going to be on that deathbed someday. And taxes. And taxes. Yep. Death and taxes. Yep. Think about them. Think about it a little bit. One quote that I heard about death that I absolutely loved is that death is a great equalizer. No matter how successful or how miserable you were in life, it's all the same at the end, right? So,
that's actually a really good one. Yeah. With having such 6 children and being an entrepreneur and, being very busy with work and then also being super busy with your families, do you have a lot of friction points with your spouse or in your family, work related or just in general? Because I could imagine that it's a lot.
I was very fortunate when I married my wife, and she is she's quite incredible in that way, where we have not had a lot of fights in our marriage. That doesn't mean that there isn't friction, obviously. I've been traveling a lot more for business, and it's difficult because I'm not able to come home and help her out in the evenings or during the middle of the night when babies are up and crying. So there's going to be those friction moments. We've been able to get through most of them. I think a lot of it is because of our attitude towards marriage, and both of us come to marriage with the attitude that it's 100% and 100%. And I think, it's easy to say that, but when you think about what that actually means, what that means is that when I made that vow to her that I would give her everything, it means I'm going to give
unconditional love.
And there are those moments where I think, why didn't you clean the dishes? This is really annoying. I've been working all day and I'm going to clean up everything that you left out for the day. Like, are you for real? And then you think, wait a minute. When I married her, I said I wasn't expecting anything in return. And so if these bother me, I'm going to go ahead and do them because that wasn't conditioned to the marriage. It's an ideal. It's not where I am mentally. I'm not saying that I have that by any means. It's the ideal that you aim for, and it's the ideal that you correct yourself against. She has the same attitude, and I know for a fact that I bug her sometimes. But it's what we check ourselves against, and it's the only way I can describe it is it's a pouring out of yourself. You pour yourself out completely to the other person until there's nothing left, and it's honestly been a really deepening experience through our marriage, through the 14 years of our marriage, where you realize, and this is the same with having kids too, right? It's a pouring out of yourself into somebody else. And the weird thing about humanity, I don't understand it at all, but you see this with successful people all the time. They start out building a business, they become super successful, then what's the next thing that most of these people do? They move into some sort of philanthropy. They start giving back because we start to realize that when we're giving back and when we're pouring ourselves out and when we're doing something for other people, that's when we get that edification. Makes us happiest. Right. And so everyone has this in their marriage. You pour yourself out and it hurts. It's hard, but it's deepening and it's fulfilling as well in the long run. At least that's the experience we've had.
That's really beautiful, actually. Wow.
So it's worked. That part's worked so far. Now, again, I'm not going to tell you that there's never a time when I don't want to just be passive aggressive and dump out all the dishes or something. That's the day-to-day reality. But big picture, you try and keep it 100.
In the Managing Happiness course, my wife and I, we came up with a way of addressing these friction points by when we have our family meeting, we bring these things up that annoy us about each other, and we list them down, and then everybody picks one of these friction points or one of these things that annoy me about my wife and vice versa, and then we work on them. And we always first we brainstorm on how can we fix the situation, kind of being solution oriented versus in the moment when you then have a fight about something, and then we track over the next meetings if we have improved on this issue, and then once one issue is at a state where it's not there anymore, then we can move up another point. So it's like continuously improving. It's the
that's great. I mean, that's that communication, being able to enjoy that level of communication. Yeah, that's got to be a wonderful thing. I can imagine that'd be hard for a lot of couples, but that's great.
I mean, I always think that. I mean, I apply everything from business to family, but just like kind of having issues in the business that will never get resolved, and just thinking how it's in most relationships that when you talk about a problem, you only talk about when you fight, and then you just want to win the argument, not really solve the issue. And this, just for my practical German mind, this was unacceptable, and I would like to get the bugs out of the system and just build a better business, better marriage, better me. So it's always about personal improvement, personal development.
Bringing that back to Quiet Light Brokerage for a minute, we find that in negotiations a lot too, right? Where people get in a negotiation and they negotiate to win as opposed to negotiating with a goal. I think you're right that those principles can be applied to marriage or to relationships as well. You keep the big goal in mind. What is a big goal? And then You check everything against that. And, in a negotiation for a business, somebody might be saying, well, I don't want to sign a non-compete for 4 years. I want to sign it for 3 years. And the question is, does that really matter to you? Is that really what you're trying to get out of this? And if so, then we'll go for it. But let's check it against what the real goal is. And then if it's something we can give in on, we give in on that, because we'll give there and get something somewhere else. So I can see where that would work for sure.
Yeah, just like knowing what you really want out of life is such a big thing that so few people actually really know. And once you have this, everything becomes so much easier, because you know where you want to get, and you're just not a leaf in the wind that flies
It's
around.
really hard to know what you want in life if all you ever do is have headphones in and listen to music and don't stop and be quiet for a while. It's very hard to do. So yeah, you need to ask those big questions.
That's awesome, Mike. This was really, really, really awesome. Thank you very much for being on the show. To wrap this up, just want to ask you, what's next for you, and is there anything that you need, that you're looking for, kind of any open positions or anything? So
at this point, I wasn't ready for that question. I don't think that there's anything that I need, other than if somebody wants to come over and babysit. I will certainly accept that.
So where do you live?
I live in Minnesota. So if anyone's here in Minnesota and wants to come over and meet my kids, you're more welcome to come on over. I'll cook you something up on the grill.
Somebody wants to join a tornado.
Exactly. You can see our crazy life and see what it's like.
Awesome, Mike. This was a real pleasure. Thank you very much for being on.
Well, thanks so much for having me on. This is such a great topic to talk about.
All right. Have a good one. Take care. Bye. Okay, recording.